Rhyu has had one of the biggest outcomes in the space of any of the brands that I am aware of. In October of 2022, Rhyu's brand that she was the co-founder and CEO of and now maintains a advisory relationship to, as she'll talk about in this episode, Rhyu's brand sold for $630 million. An incredible, massive exit. And she graciously has taken the time to come on the show today to talk about what made Hero Cosmetics work, what made Hero Cosmetics reach that kind of outcome, and then what is life like after the exit, which is one of the most interesting topics to me in all of e-commerce right now and in sort of entrepreneur land in which we live. So hello and welcome to the Andrew Ferris podcast. Thanks for joining me for an interview episode with Rhyu. Let's not waste any time. Let's dive right in and get to my conversation with the co-founder and former CEO of Hero Cosmetics, Rhyu. Rhyu, thanks so much for joining me on the Andrew Ferris podcast. I appreciate it so much. When the conversation started on Twitter and there was like any possible rumbling of the idea that you would come and talk to me about some of these things, I was like, yes, please jump in. Let's do it. So thanks for scheduling time across the world with me. You're in Paris, I'm in LA. So thanks for making it happen.
Well, I'm glad we finally got to make this happen. I know we're trying to schedule for a little bit, but happy to join, and thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. Here's the way I want to do this, just so people know kind of where we're going. I would like to start by talking about Hero and the journey and the sort of success that you guys had and all of those things, and presumably are still having. I know you're still working with Hero and all those things, but really sort of think about sort of some of those elements of the story. So maybe we can start, and then after that, I want to talk about life after the exit. So let's start with the journey for Hero. Where did you guys begin? How did you start it? What's the core product for Hero for people who don't know? And then when did you sort of start to see resonance and success after you are the founder? I know you're the co-founder, so you can maybe pepper that part of the journey into who you found with, all that stuff.
Yes. So for people who don't know, Hero Cosmetics, we're an acne care brand, and we're best known for our Mighty Patch hydrocolloid acne patches. We started in 2017, and that was a product that we started with, the Mighty Patches, and that's what we're still best known for. And I mean, that product really came out because I am someone that always, just even from when I was young to well into being adult, I always had the tendency to break out, unfortunately. And I was living in Seoul, South Korea. They're very ahead in terms of beauty trends and adoption. And back in 2012, people in Korea, they were already using this patch format on their skin. So I asked them what it was for. I was told that it was for acne, and I tried it for myself and just was amazed at how much better it worked than anything I had used before. And then I started wondering, okay, why am I learning about this now? Why is it not more available in the US? I was starting to see already some demand and some requests in the US. And I could tell that people, were wanting this type of product. So then I was like, someone needs to create it. I'll create it. So I have two co-founders. We launched in 2017 and we launched in Amazon, which no one really did back then. And now we have a whole suite of products. We have a whole acne regimen. So we always say, like, any type of pimple problem you have, we have a solution for it.
Awesome. Amazon is an interesting place to launch in that story for me because, what you just described is sort of like category creation, at least in the US, the idea that there wasn't really a patch solution for this. And I think of Amazon as being an especially good place to launch if there's already existing demand. And so maybe there was, right? Maybe there was sort of search terms around acne concerns. Yeah. So I'm interested for you to talk a little bit more about why you made that decision, if that was strategic or if you just kind of, in the early days of founding a business, it might have been lucky. Like, I don't know, what was the logic of that?
Yeah, it was sort of all those things. I mean, back then you didn't really start businesses on Amazon. Like, I remember being told by a P&G executive, like, don't sell on Amazon. And I think this is sort of like one of the benefits of being an outsider. Like, you don't know that there are rules or playbooks that you're supposed to follow. But for us, it was a really logical and practical decision because there was already, I don't know, maybe like one or two acne patch products that were from Korea being sold on Amazon. And I knew the demand was already there. We were bootstrapping. So it was a channel that was fastest, easiest, and cheapest to launch because literally within minutes, you put up your photos, you write your copy, and you're up and running. Rather than with D2C, you have to hire maybe like an engineer to make your site look nice and a designer and all that stuff. So it was kind of a practical decision, but it turned out to be a really smart one for us because we were really profitable on that channel for a while, and even still today. And so it really helped us fund other activities of the business in the early years.
Yeah, awesome. And so, okay, so you guys are bootstrapped and then raised some money eventually, right? I think
Yeah,
in terms of that. So, can
right.
you talk me through that? What was the
2020.
decision to raise? Because it sounds like you're profitable from early on, from what you just described, and then eventually decided to raise. So, can you talk through the sort of thinking there? Because actually, one of the striking things about your story is just how big the exit is relative to a lot of the stories in the sort of D2C, online consumer goods space, e-commerce space. And I'm wondering how much, raising had to do with that. That's to me the best argument for raising at some point is to increase the size of the potential outcome.
To get the bigger
Uh,
outcome, right?
right. So yeah. So I'm curious to hear you talk about sort of how that decision came about and where the business is at when you made that decision.
Yeah. So, yeah, we were profitable from the very beginning, from year one. I mean, it was really important to me because I was like, this company needs to stand on its own 2 feet. I do not want this company to be a money pit where, you use money to solve problems when you don't really have true product market fit. So that was a core sort of approach or value from the very beginning. And with the fundraise, I mean, we were in a position where we didn't need the money. So we weren't raising money for the money. We were actually raising because we wanted partners who could help us scale and get to that next level. Myself and my 2 co-founders, we were very clear that at some point we wanted to sell the company. And so it was always sort of like in the back of my mind, like, do we raise, yes or no? And if we do, when is the right time? And we started the process in 2020, early 2020s, right before COVID actually. And the first term sheets were due the week of lockdowns, which was very crazy.
Crazy.
But yeah, I think at that time we knew this business was growing really quickly. And so more than the money, we knew it was the time to bring on some people who, had been through the process and knew how to scale companies and knew how to get to an exit.
Yeah, super interesting. So the people were as valuable to you as the money in some way. Maybe that's a false equivalence, but that the
Yeah,
people
for
were a big
sure.
part of it. Yeah. Did
Yes,
those folks end
definitely.
up being as helpful as you had hoped?
Yeah, I mean, they helped recruit. They helped a lot with strategy. When we were selling the company, like they were they were
Invaluable, I bet.
invaluable just
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a finance person. There's a lot of finance stuff that happens when you
Right.
sell a company, and they knew how to, best position the company and, the key things to negotiate for. And like we ended up sort of changing law firms for this deal. And so they just knew
Right.
like
That's the
what
kind of
areas to
detail
level
if
up.
you've never done this, you just have no. Yeah, that's so helpful. That's so helpful to have that kind of person to help you think about law firms or whatever. Because yeah, that is a perfect example of where like experience and relationship just has so much value. Because yeah, that's a big deal in a
Agreed.
transaction the size that you
Yeah.
guid had. So yeah, that's
Yes.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
super
Yeah.
interesting. What about by the time you got to an exit? Tell me why you think Hero is successful. Like what, I mean, we just covered a lot of years really fast,
Yes.
and all this stuff. But like at the
Mm-hmm.
core, for somebody listening to this, why was Hero able to achieve the level of outcome that it was? Like I want to get into all the tactics and all those things, but there's only so much time to cover these things. But like what is the core driver for you of what made Hero really good? And you can really take that question wherever you want. Financial answer, marketing answer, product answer, whatever you think.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a good question because yeah, sometimes I ask myself like, if I were to replicate this again, like what did we do right, and how can I do it again if I wanted to? So I think one, in beauty and skincare, there's not often a lot of true innovation. A lot of times it's like another moisturizer, or it's more like the story. But with the patch format, I mean, we are a category creator. We created this category. It did not really exist in the US. And it was in a really good category too, because it was in acne, which is, very much a problem solution type of topic. Because when you break out, like you are desperate to do anything to get rid of your pimple. And so that category hadn't really seen any innovation in a really long time. A lot of the brands were owned by big CPGs that just, they were very under invested and didn't have a lot of attention. So I think right category, true innovation. And then the way that we built the company was really different. and made us stand out, because when we started in 2017, I mean, that was really sort of the D2C era, right? Just like growth at all costs, and doesn't matter if you're not profitable, just keep raising. And I think because we did things very differently and really focused on building a profitable business, that helped a lot, because obviously now the narrative has shifted. And so we were in a good position to be able to tell a really good financial story too. That, and then I think we focused, I think we did really well by having a lot of focus, because when when we went through that process, we were probably 40% Amazon, 45% Target, and then the remaining was D2C and other channels. So I mean, we did a lot with just focusing on two really big channels, and then the story was, hey buyers, you can take us to Walmart, you can take us to CVS, you can take us all over the world, and that was very appealing.
Yeah, so there was still some untapped upside for somebody on top of the EBITDA you're already producing, and the growth you're already producing. There's still room in front of you. That makes sense, a lot of sense. Yeah, when you say you focused on those two channels especially, what do you mean? And what I mean is, like, what were the kinds of things that you're doing in those days to like maximize? Uh, Actually, I think both of those are really interesting channels. Amazon on the one hand is its own beast, and then big box retail like Target is its own beast as well. Like, what are the core things that you're doing to sort of really focus on and maximize those channels when you think about that idea of focus?
I always say we're sort of like D2C, but we did D2C all backwards. So we started on Amazon, and we focused all our marketing on that one channel, because we didn't really have other channels to support. So we didn't even have a D2C site. We had a landing page that
Crazy.
went to
Drove to
Amazon.
Amazon.
Yeah, like our social, we pointed it to Amazon. All their press, we pointed it to Amazon. We were starting to build an email list. We would point them to Amazon. And so I think all that effort really helped us in the beginning to just drive all our resources to that one channel, which, with Amazon, if you know Amazon, it's like the more you sell, the higher your rank, the more you sell. It's sort of like that snowball effect.
Yeah.
So that was really critical. And then with Target, we had a 2-year exclusivity with them. So we were doing well. We had an exclusivity with them. And similarly, like, that exclusivity allowed us to just focus on that one retailer, that one partner. That means they were investing in us, we were investing in them. And then we were able to really create this amazing business together. And, we said no to all sorts of retailers, because we knew it would just take, more time and resources away from Target. And that worked really well for us.
Yeah, and there's plenty of white space in Target. There's a lot of Targets with a lot of customers who probably need acne care. Like, that's like, it makes sense. This is like always the back and forth between like increase your demand capture with more channels versus focus on doing an incredible job in a few places. And I think it's a very hard decision, because there's probably times when it actually does make sense to keep expanding your demand capture into more places and all that. And there's probably times when it makes more sense to focus. But I just am continuing to see from a lot of folks how much wisdom there is in this ability to focus. Like, your Amazon story is wild to me, because when I think through what would have to happen to send your email list and your landing page and all those things to Amazon, it's such a black box that it would also be, but I'm assuming like the major measurement you're getting of your success there is just sales. Like, you just have to sort of trust that as long as the sales are coming, because Amazon, I mean, maybe at your guys' scale, Amazon is giving you more information than they give most people, but it just strikes me that would be hard. And yet what you're saying also makes a lot of sense to me, which is, I mean, as you were saying it, I was thinking that thought along with you, which is that the Amazon flywheel really spins itself a lot faster once you start selling. Like, sales create more sales. And so it actually makes a ton of sense to me as a specific Amazon strategy to sort of to really drive your marketing towards that channel, and just trust that what that will end up producing for you is a bunch of additional organic value. And I'm sure in your case with your product, a bunch of LTV as well. People are going to buy on Amazon and then rebuy on Amazon and all that kind of stuff as well. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
It's tricky too, because you consciously have to like prioritize one channel over another. So there was this one founder, she had a sizable DTC site. She wanted to, I think, pivot to retail. So she was launching at Target. So she had this great quote. It was something like, sometimes you have to kill your baby to save your spouse, or something like that, where she was basically consciously prioritizing the retail relationship over her DTC, because I think she knew that launching at Target, like, nationally,
cannibalize some sales. Right.
Yes. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, that's the decision that we made early on. We decided to prioritize Amazon over our own D2C. And, there are a lot of like naysayers like, oh, you don't own the customer, you don't have the data, et cetera, et cetera. But there are always trade-offs. And so sometimes you just have to choose one over the other.
Yeah, and I mean that's probably true to some degree, except that like I think one of the situations in which early D2C theories are most shifted in today's D2C world is the sort of own the customer thesis. Like that's something that like there are some brands, and I don't know. I mean, Hero is Hero pretty high LTV?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I would think people would be coming back repeatedly and some of those things. That would maybe make some sense for D2C specifically, but it's only the only brands where I really think that logic really holds is when you have extreme high LTV, where it's like if you can do subscription or something like that, where you can maintain the ability to kind of keep that customer for the longer term. Although even there, I bet you LTV. I mean, I don't have any great data to back this up. I bet LTV is better on Amazon than even D2C, including in subscription, just because Amazon's the best shopping experience in the world. It's just so easy and so awesome for
It's
customers that
so easy. Yeah.
yeah. And so like, I mean, I've got my subscribe and save cart and I've got the same stuff I've had for forever there. And I probably have higher LTV on a lot of those products than I do on my D2C products that all those kinds of things. So it makes a lot of sense. Okay, I could go down this road with you for a very long time, and maybe that's a future podcast. But that's a good like overview of kind of where things are at. You end up with this exit. Maybe quickly, who acquired you? I've read it, but maybe you could talk about that and how that relationship worked out. And
Yeah.
you could say a little bit about what you're up to now. I know that you were the CEO of Hero, and you're still on with Hero, but maybe in a different capacity. So who acquired you, and what are you up to now, and all those kinds of things. And then from there, we'll shift over and talk
Yeah.
about your post exit experience.
Yeah, so the acquirer is Church and Dwight. They are a US based multi brand conglomerate, publicly traded company. They have brands like Nair and Batiste. They acquired TheraBreath a year before us. Um, and they have like Waterpik and Trojan condoms. They have like a whole portfolio of brands. So yeah, we sold in October 2022, and now I'm in more of like I guess, advisory role. So I used to be the founder CEO, but I'm kind of less operational. They really run the business now. I just help like really telling the brand story, the founder story. I've been helping them with international because we've been launching in other markets, helping with culture and making sure the integration is going really well.
Yeah, makes perfect sense, and honestly, sounds really fun. It sounds like you get to still be involved with something that you created and love, and probably have a lot of
Yeah,
it does become your baby,
I'm
and at
not
the same time,
complaining.
yeah, and at the same time, you
Yeah.
don't have to be the CEO, which is a really hard job. So,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, so let's talk about it. So you exited in October, which is just a little over a year ago now, as we record this at the end of November in 2023. So talk to me about that. So what were because this is the thing that got the conversation started. I'm really curious to hear you tell the story as sort of honestly as possible. There's a lot of ways this narrative is like supposed to go in a lot of different directions. There's on the one hand, there's we had an exit, it was amazing, everything was awesome, and look at how great we did narrative. On the other hand, there's oh, money doesn't make you happy, and there's sort of that narrative, and people tell both. So I'm just curious to hear, like, well, first of all, what was your expectation of what it would feel like? Where were you at? Like when I talked to Patrick Cadu about this, and I'll link his episode in the podcast. You and I were chatting about that a little bit before. Patrick talked a lot about how much after he exited, he realized just how burnt out he actually was. And that like he had driven so hard to get to that moment that by the time he got to that, he realized, gosh, I don't know how much more I could have made it until afterwards. He realized that. So were you in that place or were you feeling good? I mean, give me some sense of where you're at and what your expectations were for the exit.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't burnt out. I definitely know founders who are. I could have continued. I could have, I probably had another few years in me to keep going. So for us, we were growing really fast and would hit this sort of revenue threshold. And the macro environment back then was also sort of like the clouds were darkening. So we knew this was sort of the moment. But what did I expect? I expected us to, kind of like, I thought we were amazing. Like, because every founder thinks their business is like the best, right? So like we have this amazing brand and we're so profitable and we have an amazing team and look at the, all the crazy things that we're doing and accomplishing. So I was like, the sale process, like it's no problem. Like we're gonna, it's a slam dunk. Like it's definitely gonna happen. So definitely, I think I went in probably overly confident, but yeah, there were a lot of ups and downs to the process for sure, with just macro environment and the way that the buyers think. They really probe at your business in a very different way. But I have to say, like when we ended up selling and the press announcement went out, I will say it was probably one of the best days of my life.
Oh, I'm sure. That's
I
awesome.
Yeah, I felt like I won the Super Bowl.
So
And
great.
it was amazing because it felt like it was a win, obviously not just for us and the team, but like almost for any like CPG like founder or brand out there. Cause there were a lot of people like cheering us on, and maybe it was sort of like a symbolic win for everybody. But that was surprising and really awesome.
I think that's right. I think that in the sort of D2C land community, like to be honest, like I was sort of vaguely aware of, Hero being a good business. And then the win happened and it, kind of made the rounds. And I was like, wow, awesome. Way to go. This person I don't even know. There's some sort of sense in which I think with entrepreneurs like this, especially people who are not like, you think of sort of like your venture backed software company. That's just like a different universe than most of the D2C, kind of world lives in, or the ecom world lives in. You guys raised your Series A, but like you said, you were bootstrapped at first, 3 years, just such a different founding story than that. And I think the whole reason I love working with entrepreneurs actually is because like I want so much for that person who took the risk, stepped out, did a really hard thing from the ground up, built this thing, often starting in their living room, shipping stuff out of their, whatever, all those things. And I don't know exactly the contours of your story, but like all those things happen. And it's just like you want to get to that win the Super Bowl moment together and clink glasses and just be like, man, you did it. I mean, that's a really hard thing to do. And like you said about the sale process, like I've been through a lot of sale process, not a lot, but a few. None of them are the size and scope that you're talking about or anything like that. But the thing I have come to learn about them with total clarity is that they are never done until they're done. Until the ink is signed and the money hits your bank
Until
account.
the money is in your bank.
That's right.
Yes.
It's not done. There are all kinds of ways for
100%.
it to go wrong. And so like
Hmm.
deals that you're like certain are going to happen end up falling apart. And so, yeah, so it's just, anyway, that there's so many steps to get there. That's really awesome. So, okay. So you have the Super Bowl, you win the Super Bowl moment, you have all of that happen. Then what happened after that for you? What was your experience like after that? How long did that feeling last for?
Gosh, I mean, it lasted for a while. I mean, I told everybody I'm going to celebrate for as long as like people will let me celebrate. So we had announced, I think the
That's
announcement went
awesome.
out right after Labor Day, like September. Then we closed, and I hosted something for like a bunch of my friends and took my family on a vacation. So that was fun.
Where'd you
And
go?
then I went to Mexico.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. And just lived
So
it
that
up.
was awesome. Yeah, yeah. I
I
went to
mean,
this
you
whole
got to.
house, and
Of
yeah,
course.
it's like
Yeah,
one of
got
those
to.
like once in a lifetime sort of
100%. Yeah.
experiences.
It's great.
Yeah. Um, and then yeah, I mean, eventually it's sort of like all that it does fade away, and then you have a different. You're living sort of a yeah, you have it's a new chapter, I guess. You're living a different type of life. It's funny because I've been sort of observing kind of how life is now compared to like what it was like before, and what I realize is that when you become rich, it's much easier to become richer. Like just because you
Yes.
get invited to a lot of opportunities that you would not
Yeah.
have access to as a quote unquote normal person. So like these are things I never had access to before, but now suddenly like people know you had a successful exit, and you're sort of like in a way part of this exclusive club. That's probably one of the biggest differences that I've seen.
Super interesting. Investment opportunities, that kind of stuff. Like, yeah.
Yeah, like investment opportunities. Like people approach you about starting new businesses together. Like you get access to LP opportunities, or private offerings to secondaries of like companies that you never really knew you could have access to. And so like the biggest thing for me is like what I realize is inevitably have to learn to be your own capital allocator. And so I'm not a finance person. So that's like a skill that I'm trying to learn right now, because you have your own money. So you have to figure out like what kind of investments you want to make and how you're going to allocate, how you're going to allocate everything, because you just, a lot of times, like you don't have, there's just so many opportunities. You can't say yes to everything. So you have to kind of have your own thesis or philosophy for how you do all that. So it's been a big sort of learning for me.
How long did it take before those opportunities started coming through? I mean, was it a week? Was it 3 months? Was it, yeah.
I mean, I think because our deal was so public, it was
Yeah.
pretty
Pretty
immediate.
fast.
Yeah, like they just, all sorts of people start knocking on your door, like
Hmm.
the wealth managers and like different bankers and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. How have you sorted through that? Because I imagine there's also some danger there, right? That's a lot of people coming to you, especially if you're, self-professed, not primarily a finance person. What have been the helpful tools for you, at least so far, and sort of beginning to think about that? It's actually still relatively early, but I'm curious where you're at so far with that sort
Yeah.
of thing.
So someone gave me really good advice. They said you should just do nothing for the first 6 to 12 months. Just say
Yeah.
no. Just say no, or just say you're not ready. You're going to think about it, because right after the exit, like you're in such a period of euphoria, and that inevitably calms down and goes away. And so, I took that advice, and I'm glad I did, because I've talked to other founders who I think they were like, oh, I made so many mistakes. I think they were too maybe optimistic, and they like wrote checks into things that they now regret or whatnot. And so I said no to everything. There were like board opportunities, advisor opportunities, investment opportunities. I just was like, no, not right now. So I just wanted to let the dust settle, see the integration through, and kind of see how I felt in 6 to 12 months. And so now is sort of when I'm starting to pick my head back up and really trying to think through everything. But I think, for anyone that goes through something similar, like just give yourself time. There's no need to like immediately do something, right away. Like those opportunities will still be there even
Yeah.
months later.
Yeah. If you're scaling an e-commerce business, you know how important it is to get your supply chain dialed. Or you should know. And if you don't know, it might be because you do not realize how much efficiency there is in your business left to be built by having a great supply chain, logistics, inventory management, inventory forecasting setup and system. And that starts with getting good, experienced help. And there is a solution to get that help without paying an arm and a leg. That solution is More Fractional Supply Chain. More Fractional Supply Chain is a part of More Staffing, the staffing agency I use that works in the Philippines to bring incredible professional talent to your e-commerce organization from the Philippines, people with incredible resumes, deep work experience, who can bring all of that knowledge to your business and can do that at Filipino salaries that are very competitive in the Philippines. Therefore, you attract very good talent there, but a lot cheaper than hiring that same person in the US. More Fractional Supply Chain is a division of More Staffing that specifically seeks to give you fractional supply chain leadership in your business in a way that is affordable for you. And let me tell you, I deal with a lot of businesses where the founder is somebody who's a product person or a marketing person or a growth person. They did not get into it because of their supply chain and inventory management expertise. And yet that is one of the landmines that is possible to step on in a growing e-commerce business that can create major problems in the business by not doing that right. Go get access to the incredible knowledge that is available to you in More Fractional Supply Chain. They will do all kinds of great work for your company. If you need to staff up your supply chain, inventory management, inventory forecasting sides of your business, and again, you probably do if your e-commerce business is growing, go look into doing that in a cost-effective and incredibly powerful way with my friends at More Fractional Supply Chain. Use the code AJF20 at morenow.co. That's AJF20 at morenow.co. And of course, the link is in the show notes to get 20% off your first 3 months. Go check it out now. Let's talk about it at the level of sort of personal experience in terms of maybe start with work. Now your role changes. You go from CEO, which is a hard job, but has its own kind of, the difficulty of it is fulfilling in its own way as well. Like, do you miss that at all?
Yeah, I mean, things are different for sure. And like, I already went through this sort of like emotional separation process, which I think is important, because I heard that
That's really
there's,
good.
yeah, I heard a lot of founders go through a kind of founder depression, because you work so hard at something and you're involved in a lot of the details and all the decision making, and then you sell to someone else, and suddenly you're probably not in charge anymore. You don't have the final say. And I think some people, they get really unhappy because they cling, and they want it to be like how it was. But I think internally I was just like, you know what? I know, Church and Dwight, they paid a lot of money for this company. This is their company now. I'm here just, to support them, to make sure this brand continues to be successful under their ownership. And so I think I realized I have to play a different role. And yeah, so there's a little bit of like that internal kind of emotional breaking up that you have to do to be able to like feel comfortable playing that role.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think the idea of sort of like making an active step, committing to the idea that you are going to change that role makes sense. Otherwise, I'm sure it's very hard. I'm sure it's very easy rather to slip into CEO mode. This was your thing, whatever. And you probably have to, give some intentionality to the idea of making a shift like that. I think that makes sense. What about personally, sort of the money hits and all those things? Did you feel like you said, the euphoria lasted for a little while. What about after the euphoria? Do you feel like it delivered at the sort of level of human fulfillment and joy, and sort of anything you're willing to say about that side of things? I'm curious about your experience with such a life-changing moment like that.
Yeah. So who was it? Someone asked me if I was happy, actually.
Yeah.
A founder, they were like, you had an amazing outcome, but are you happy? Because she knew other founders who had gone through exits and they were not happy. Just because, again, I think we're
clarify.
Purpose.
Right. Uh-huh. So you think they were not only not happy, but less happy? Is that the idea? They were less happy than when they were?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it's sort of, sometimes you find yourself a little bit purposeless because you like just gave everything you had to this one thing, and all of a sudden you don't have that to work on anymore. But I told her I'm happy. I'm still happy. So
that's great. That's great.
I
Why do you think that is?
I mean, I think you have to have purpose, like beyond just work also. So having hobbies, and because some people, like all they do is like that one thing, and then when you don't have it anymore, you find yourself very like purposeless. But I think if you have a well-rounded life, and you have your friends and your community and your family and other hobbies that you're really interested in, like that helps fill that void. So I think that's like one aspect of it. And I think that separation process that I went through also helped, because now, that's sort of a process. And then I'm starting to think about like the next chapter, what does that look like? And how can I, like, what am I going to do next? Which for me is exciting. I think for some people it can be kind of scary, but I'm excited. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah. When you talk about community, hobbies, purpose besides work, a more well-rounded life, are there some things that you can share for you that check those boxes for you? What are some of those things in your life that you think have led you to be able to sort of go through the moment and remain happy in that respect?
Yeah, I'm very close with my family. I think also I built a really amazing community in the founder community.
Awesome.
So like maybe they started out as colleagues, but now they're friends, and it's fun just to sort of like kind of continue to ideate with them, and they approach me about like certain ideas. So in that sense, I'm still engaged. I'm not working on anything like 100% yet, but it's like, as sort of like some of the hero work has reduced because now I'm playing a new role, all these new opportunities come up, and they sort of help fill that, I guess, void. So that's been really fun. And, it's like allowed me to do things like work out. Like I hired this like online coach, and I started working out 3 times a week, which I never really had time for before. And I started like thinking a lot more about my health, and, I'm reading these books on like longevity. And then
Peter Attia. You reading Peter Attia?
Yes. Yeah.
Of course. That's awesome.
Finishing that. Yeah, of course. Yeah. And then we're moving. So the house project was sort of like another project that took up a lot of time. So those are like things that, that were fun projects and fun things for me to work on that sort of, kind of help fill that hero void, I guess.
Yeah. It makes sense. It sounds like there's things to work on still. Sometimes I think people have a vision of the thing you get when you have an outcome like you had is ease. That's sort of like what the money buys them, right? That, and there's of course a truth to that, right? Like you don't have to worry about money now. Like you'd have to make some really big mistakes to lose the amount of money you've made. And while I'm sure those stories happen, I bet they're pretty rare. Just because you'd have to really make some big mistakes. But so what people are looking for in general, in that respect, the money has, I think, I'm sure, provided you ease. You don't have to go like fight for your next meal or whatever it is, and that's a real outcome, right? But I think what some people are imagining is like life on the beach, the sort of idea that you do that and that's what'll make you happy, vacation forever, that kind of mentality. But I just really believe that and this is something I believed anyway. But then from talking to a lot of folks across, who have made a lot of money, whether it's with an exit or something else, and then also just a broad range of experiences, it just seems like work in some way is a very human thing and produces a kind of fulfillment and pleasure that is really, really hard to mimic elsewhere. So vacations are great, but they're vacations. The idea is that you're getting away and resting, and that actually like ease, or you're getting away and celebrating, maybe, like you talked about with your trip to Mexico. There's a sort of specific purpose for that in relation to your broader life, which is not that you want to live on vacation forever, although I'm sure some people do that and have a great time or whatever, but that
Yeah.
there's actually purpose provided in the work itself. And so what you're
Yep.
describing is interesting to me, right? That you change your role at Hero, you actively disengage and intentionally disengage from your previous role at Hero, and you replace that with, okay, we're going to move, we're going to work on what our house is going to be like. There's a bunch of decisions to make there. There's a bunch of ways in which I'm going to set that up for myself. It's a purpose to chase. I'm going to work out. I'm going to think about longevity. I'm going to go and take on new purposes and those kinds of things. I think maintaining some sense of that is just, I think, when I've heard the founder has a big exit and gets less happy story, it's almost always because they have all of that stuff is gone and they can't figure out a way to
Yeah.
replace it. Even if they do
Right.
work out or whatever, it's not meeting that need for them.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? It's not exactly like, boom, you have this exit, that chapter's over, and then like some people do, I guess, like you immediately have something else. Like for me, it's a process. It's going to be a process. I mean, the number one question everyone asks me is like, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do next? And honestly, I'm just like, I don't know. And I think it's totally fine to not know. I think it's fine to take your time. I remember someone told me like, oh, but sometimes when you're a founder and you have a successful exit, you have an expiration date, and the expiration date's like a year. So it kind of like, it gives you kind of
Yeah.
undue pressure to be like, oh my God,
Yeah.
like I have to do, if I'm going to be relevant, I have to like do something again. But you know what? I'm going to take my time. I think inspiration happens when it happens, and it'll be fine.
Yeah, right. The assumption behind that expiration date idea is that you care about that, that you care about being viewed as like founder who has something to offer or whatever. Because I'm sure there's truth to the thing in one respect, but if you don't care, then it doesn't matter. If it's not what you're aiming at, then it probably doesn't matter as
Yeah.
much. Super interesting. Okay, well, I was going to ask you what you're going to do next, but you've just answered the question. And it sounds a little bit like actually, Patrick. When I talked to Patrick Cadu about his exit, again, very different scale, but when I talked to him about his, he brought up the notion of taking a sabbatical, and it sounds like maybe a different language for a similar thing, which he was talking about adding working out
Yes.
back in, adding some other kind of
Yeah.
pursuits, and taking a little bit of time before he goes and dives into the next thing, and he doesn't even know
Yeah.
what that thing is necessarily going to be. Sort of an intentional time, even like you're saying
Yeah.
about like, I'm going to wait 6 to 12 months before I go and write my big angel checks or whatever. So interesting. All right, Ju, anything we missed? Anything that people should hear from you about? Any big reflections on your journey that you'd want people to hear?
Oh gosh.
Broad, open-ended question, I know.
Just feel like I'm incredibly lucky, and it's kind of funny because also like when you have a successful exit, I think like you kind of become a celebrity in a way, or you become like this person.
Sure.
And it sort of makes me uncomfortable just because, yeah, I mean, I just feel like I'm a, normal average person who like got extremely lucky for sure. But I will say that I can already tell, I mean, I don't know if or when I'm going to start something different or new, but I can already tell that the second time around, it's going to be much easier because you already have like the contacts and the relationships. You've made all the mistakes, so you know what not to do. Funding is going to be so much easier because you're sort of a proven entrepreneur. Also, you can probably self-fund, so you probably don't have to worry about money as much. So I'll be curious to see, yeah, like if I end up doing something, like I'll be curious to see what that experience is like. But
yeah, that makes sense. I think there's the wins you've had, which represent intellectual and experiential capital, but there's also the mistakes you made along the way. I'm sure your journey to an exit was not mistake free, and so all of those things like are so valuable. And I actually think the best kind of mistakes you can make are the mistakes on the way to a win, because you can actually contextualize them relative to the wins you've had as well, and see the good and the bad of both, and understand what makes the mistake a mistake. If you just make all mistakes, you may not have learned from them, Anyway, interesting. Okay, awesome. Is there somewhere people should be following up with what you're doing if they want to stay up on your journey? Is there any place you want to direct people to, Ju?
You can follow me on Instagram. You can follow me on Twitter. Or X now. I've been a little bit less active on what is now X. But I don't know, this is the other debate too. Sometimes it's like, I kind of want to get back into it. And I know like Patrick too, he's sort of, maybe this is part of his sabbatical. He's kind of taken a step back in terms of posting. I always loved like his content and his tweets and stuff.
I know. He told me he's not coming back. He's like, that it's never going to happen.
Really?
I was like, dang it, dude, you're so good on Twitter. That stinks.
Yeah, that sucks. Yeah. But yeah, it's kind of an internal debate for me too. Like, do I want to just like be more on the down low and be more behind the scenes, or do I want to be more active and have more of a public persona? So, but in the meantime, you can follow me there.
Yeah, followed you on Instagram and on X, and then that way, if she comes roaring back with content or talking about her next thing or any of the reflections, you can follow her there. So, hey, thanks so much for taking the time. I appreciate you doing this a lot and sharing with people what you've learned along the way, and some of the wisdom from the journey. I'm sort of just so fascinated. I told you before we started recording, and I've told a lot of people this right now, that the sort of the most interesting topic to me right now in e-commerce is, what is life like for the people who achieve the thing that most people are aiming at? What is it actually like on the other side of that? And I've had very small exits, nothing like with the personal impact that you were describing. It's all been in the context of large organizations and those kinds of things. So I continue to be interested in sort of people's stories as they achieve really big, impressive things. And it is really big and impressive. I hope you feel proud of it. It's an awesome outcome. And I think also what you said is right, which is that a lot of people are cheering that on, in part because people are just, in a really cool way, I think, in the e-com world, sort of for each other, and they taste a little bit of it themselves, and it gives them a little hope for their exit as well. And so it's really cool. So thanks again for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's fun doing this.
All right. All right, there you have it. My conversation with Rhyu. I hope that was helpful to you. I am so fascinated by people's different experiences along the journey of e-commerce. I've heard everything from the stories that Ju was referencing here of people who were much less happy after their exit, to people like Ju who seem really happy and fulfilled and feeling great about where life is going and just kind of keep trucking on and have fulfillment and purpose outside of just their business. And I've heard everything in between. So I hope that, again, was helpful to you. I told Ju after we hung up that I was really fascinated by her Amazon strategy as well. I think the notion of really building around Amazon specifically for the sake of capturing the Amazon flywheel, that bears more consideration. If you have not heard my interview with Brian Porter, I've actually done a couple with him, but I will link the one that is most relevant here. Brian Porter is the chief e-commerce officer at Simple Modern, another Amazon first monster e-commerce brand. Just very, very similar distribution strategy to what Ju described about Hero. If you want to hear more about how to think about Amazon and how they built a 9-figure Amazon business at Simple Modern and still growing, you should go listen to that interview with Brian Porter. You'll like that a lot. Again, also my interview that we referenced a couple times with Patrick Cadu about his life after the exit is also in the show notes, so you can go check that out there. And don't forget to use the code AJF20 at morenow.co to get fractional supply chain help from More Fractional Supply Chain, staffing agency and fractional team for your supply chain in the Philippines. I love this sponsor. I work with them personally with the staffing part of their business for my business. I've been very helped by them. They're high integrity, great quality, professional team members on my own team. Go check it out by going to morenow.co. Again, use the code AJF20 to get 20% off your first 3 months. As always, I would love it if you would subscribe to this podcast. We've got a couple of really awesome episodes coming up, including I'm going to talk more about the state of my business, if you're interested in that, and sort of where AJF growth is at relative to what my expectations were and my relationship to the idea of goals, which is something I've been thinking about a lot. Things are going well. I want to tell you about it. I want to tell you about why I think it's going well and the sort of shape and contours of my business relative to what I set out to create in the first place. I've also got a great interview coming up with Fan by sees like 50 e-commerce businesses a week on the M&A side because he's got an aggregator and is constantly acquiring businesses. That's going to be a great episode as well. So that's it. You know what to do. Rate, review, email me, podcast@ajfgrowth.com, at Andrew J. Ferris on Twitter. All the links, as always, are in the show notes, and I will see you next time.
Script with my eyes closed.